Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
What? Yeah, back? Is that really back anymore? Is it just
welcome to
now?
a new
How long
year.
it's been?
It's been. When was the last time we had an episode out? I don't even know. But
I don't know.
every time we go on like a
Unknown.
hiatus or something, it's just because life has gotten the best of us.
Yeah. Karma's got its
What
kiss
karma?
for me, as the kids say.
What karma?
I'll just say that happened. I don't think I attract bad karma. I just really relate to that meme of the girl crying in the car who's just like, karma's got its kiss for me. That's like me at all times this past year.
Yeah, but life 2021 has not been the best.
No, we were literally just talking about, I think aside from COVID, everyone I know has had some also personal issue or issues in 2021. So collectively, it is nobody's year.
With a new, I guess this is the new season of Pineapple Headache.
We're back.
Anyway, today we are talking about Disney's hottest new movie.
Fresh off
I
the
guess
press,
it's not
hot off the
Disney's
press,
hottest
whatever
new
the saying
movie,
is.
Disney. Well, okay, yeah, Disney's 60th
Walt
animated
Disney
feature.
Animation
I remember
Studios.
when I went to go see it in theaters.
Ooh. Oh, yes. I saw that in theaters, too. Yes, with the thing. Yeah, yes.
Well, what movie is it, Madison?
It's Encanto. Ooh. Also with that cute little short in the beginning.
Oh my gosh, the Far From the Tree. It's also said Far From the Tree is such like a good short to show with the themes that were in the movie as well.
In both of them, yeah. Those went so well together. But yes.
Yes, I enjoyed it.
Beautiful.
As well.
Stephanie Beatriz, I have been standing you since Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And now here you are, flourishing.
Flourishing. I know, she's been having a big year in musicals because she was also in the Heights the same year.
Yes. And I'm just so happy to hear her, to watch and hear her in her real voice.
Yeah.
And not the Rosa voice, but also I just think it makes the Rosa voice even funnier.
It adds to the comedy. It adds to her reputation, because a lot of people, I feel like with each new role she has, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. And it's like, what is her real voice? And then that's her real voice. Mm-hmm. She's just such an adorable human. And she had a baby too last year. Like, good for her. What a year.
Maybe she had a great year. She had a great year in 2020.
Okay, yeah. One exception to the 2021 rule is her and her family, because baby and then all of her commercial, film, professional, whatever success. Yes. Good for her.
Good for her.
And I guess Lin-Manuel Miranda, because it seemed like he had a busy year too.
Lin-Manuel Miranda was involved in 4 musicals in 2021, and honestly I feel like if you, aside from West Side Story, I think he's gonna take over all of like the musical categories for like the awards seasons coming up, the award shows coming up, because it already happened with Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes that were not on TV, so I barely even know what happened. I know Encanto won, and I think West Side Story won
Best
musical comedy one.
Don't you think it's
best
funny?
Musical or comedy,
but it is like the least funniest musical that has come out this year.
Yeah. Well. Oh well.
Well, why don't we start with like your watch experience? Like, where did you watch it? How many times have you watched it?
So I've watched it twice. So originally I was supposed to see it the day after Thanksgiving with my sister and my friend. And then the night of Thanksgiving, we stayed up all night looking for my cat who got out. Freaking Queso escaped.
Right. Yes, I remember that.
Yes. So that happened. He came back. The story ended happily. So then we all slept. I slept half the day on Friday, and we were just so, like, drained. So we did not see Encanto together that day. But then later the following week on that Tuesday, which is how I learned AMC has discount Tuesdays, which is fantastic. But so me and my sister went and saw it, and it was really good. And I was like, whoa. And then I watched it again on Disney Plus during like the Christmas season. But me and my sister really enjoyed it together. We were both like, dang, this is so much to process. And it's such a family, like, generational trauma family movie that we were like, whoa, this is a lot to take in.
The main theme.
Yes, and then when I watched it on Disney Plus, like at home, and then my mom also watched it with us, and she enjoyed it. She and my sister, I think, are both Lynn stans, so they also enjoyed it for that. But yeah, so that was basically my watch experience. What about yours?
The first time I watched it in theaters by myself. I didn't watch it with my sister.
Awesome. Awesome.
But it was a movie that I always wanted to see because, again, like, this was back then when I used to work in my theater job. I no longer work at that theater job anymore, guys. But I saw the ending to it, and the last part I saw was the "All of You" song, and I was like, okay, like I'm vibing with it. Let me go see what this is all about. Literally, the first time my first, like, I guess exposure to the movie was literally watching the flashback of the grandma, like, losing her husband.
Oh my god!
And I was like,
that's, like,
this
so
is
much.
Traumatic. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that was the first thing I've ever seen in that movie. So I was like, okay, I guess I need to go see what this was all about then.
Yeah, you need to see, like, how did they get to that point?
Yeah. But yeah, I watched it in theaters. Did I watch it on a Tuesday? I don't know, but I watched it at a Cinemark. Paid $5 for.
Oh my god, yeah, they also have all these movie theaters. You have to just really know your way around it. To get into it.
And I enjoyed it. I think it took me a while. Like, I understood all the themes and everything, but I think it took me a while to really like it, because I think it was a very different Disney movie to me. Like,
yes, I felt the same.
Like, when I came out, I was like, oh, this was good. But I think I was more so trying to basically come to terms that there wasn't like any big Disney villain. We weren't in some, like, we're in some fantasy land type of deal. Yeah. And everything took place in one location.
Yes, that especially was what caught me off guard.
Yeah, and
there was no physical, like, journey or traveling or adventure.
Like, no faraway lands to go to. So I was like, oh, this is like very different. And it's like all of the characters were the family members for the most part. So I was like, there was no, like, animal, like, talking animal or anamorphic.
Oh, thank God.
Thing. So I was
I cannot with, like, the Olafs of Disney. Like, I can no more.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I enjoyed it, and then I watched it again around Christmas time with Dion. I watched it twice with Dion, and then I think my sisters were also watching it in one of those watches. So I watched it 3 times.
Ooh.
And now Dion is trying to get the art book for that movie.
The art is it's so, like, everything, it's so visually stunning.
The animation for that movie, like, it just felt so smooth and bouncy.
The colors.
Yeah.
The colors, the details, like, I loved, like, honestly, every scene where it was just, like, Mirabelle was, like, most of the frame. I was just always looking at her dress.
Yeah.
Like, her dress with all the little embroidered things, like, just so much. And it was like, I just love all the attention to detail, and it being like she sews, and I'm like, she embroidered her whole skirt and shirt outfit, like, and then the second time I watched, I kept looking at, like, Isabella's, like when she did the color stuff during that song, and then so I kept looking at her dress too after that. I'm not even gonna attempt the Spanish pronunciations of the names, because it's not good. I'm not gonna sound correct.
The thing that I was really impressed with the movie was, like, I think one of the things I noticed with this movie is that a lot of the musical sequences kind of went into like more fantasy type of sequences. I don't think I'm, like, if I'm wording it right, but you know how in like whenever, I guess if we're using, like, Frozen or Tangled as an example, whenever we have a musical song, like, it's just the characters, like, moving, like, walking or, like, reaching some other place, or, like, it's driving the story along, but, like, actually physically, like, moving from location to location. But, like, when it came to, like, the musical sequences in this movie, like, you know, when Luisa has her song, it's, like, jumping from, like, analogy of like her fighting Cerberus, or like, you know, very high fantasy type of situations. Or like when we're talking about, we don't talk about Bruno, it goes from like flashback to like, you know, each character going through their internal thoughts about Bruno. So I like enjoyed the it just felt very high beat, like driven, very upbeat type of feeling.
Yeah, also, like, I feel like doing that during the musical sequences helps, like, because the rest of the movie is, like, literally just the one setting. It's, like, in the casita and all that, so, like, yeah, so having, like, that instead, where it's, like, the songs take us to those other places, but then we come back. Yeah. Like, that was really interesting.
Should we even, like, say in brief, like, the plot of Encanto, or no? Or do you think everyone already know? Do our audience members already know what this movie's about?
I feel like you've either seen it or you know because you go on TikTok and then they're all analyzing it on TikTok and on social media.
Okay, well, I guess if anyone doesn't know, it's about this family that's in their own little community, and they all have their gifts in Colombia, and they all have their gifts except the protagonist, Mirabel. And the house is dying.
Magic.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yes.
The house is...
The magic house gives them each a gift that has, like, they each have their own special powers. And then, yes.
The magic is dying, so
she's dying.
Mirabel's trying to figure out what's going on with it. But yeah, I enjoyed the story too. Like, it did... Also, the whole thing of, like, it's not going to another place, and, like, the problem is right at home. Already touching on, like, intergenerational trauma, because, as we all know, that's all at home.
Yes. I guess not, like, just everything.
Yeah, I guess not all of us, but, you know, families who do experience that.
Yeah, well, and then a lot of it is caused because, as you learn, as the movie progresses, the whole house and everything kind of came about because when the matriarch of the family was, like, the grandma, when she had just the triplets, her kids, they were all she and her community, like, they were all displaced by, like, you know, who, like, I don't know who was I don't know all the Colombian history, but
yeah. Well,
but basically, like, violent displacement, and that's how they end up in their new place, but then they get the house and all that.
Well, I got this from a TikTok, so I'm pretty sure I probably am, like, partly wrong about it, but because when I first saw it, I literally thought it was just like, oh, this is like some colonizer coming to like take over. But I didn't know it was like specific to Colombian history, where like there were people like Colombian guerrillas displacing indigenous communities. So I was like, oh, okay, like this is a very specific thing for this culture and community, that a lot of, like, from what I saw in, like, the comments and stuff, a lot of Colombians were, like, correcting people, being like, it's not what you think it is. Like, a lot of families still are, you know, affected by those events that happened back in the day. Like, you know, Abuela.
Yeah.
Like Mirabel, Mirabel and her whole family. So a lot of Colombian people were going in the comments being like, no, like, this still has effects to, like, their generation today. So I'm like, oh.
And just, like, this displacement of your whole community and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think me or Madison can speak much on Colombian culture, because we are not Colombian, nor have I really been exposed to Colombian culture. So I don't think we're gonna talk too much on that. But what I will talk about is that, I mean, as a Filipino American, I feel like I related to a lot of themes in that movie, and a lot of the family dynamics in that movie.
Yeah. Or even just, like, the thing of, like, being displaced, too, even though that was, like, the one, like, the specific story in Encanto is, like, a specific, like, displacement that happened, but a lot of, like, communities around the world, I think, can relate to that, too. Especially a lot of, like, different people of color and stuff.
Yeah.
And all that. Like, we are pretty much all descended from displaced peoples, too. So then boom comes the intergenerational trauma. But just so much to think about. Like, I just am so impressed by the fact that, like, you would think of, like, if I was being pitched this film where it's like, this is going to be this film about, like, a family dealing with intergenerational trauma, I would have been like, wow, that's, like, a pretty, like, mature theme or whatever.
Mm-hmm,
Like, you know, I would be like, wow. But they managed to, like, make it, like, accessible to children and, like,
yeah.
convey it in such a, like, not, like, simple, but, like, way that, like, all ages can, like, understand and connect to it, which, like, I know Disney, like, does that a lot, but something like this feels like, especially, like, complex, that I'm just, like, so impressed.
Yes.
That, like, this worked the way it did.
I know, I think they delivered the themes well. I feel like, I don't know, with something to talk about, like, intergenerational trauma, and I guess this is just me going into, like, critiquing the film as a film now, but I feel like this movie could have been longer to me, because it was, like, an hour and a half.
Yeah, I feel like animated movies are always very, like, hesitant to go past, like, that 90-minute mark. But, yeah, especially, like, because I thought the ending, like, I wanted to see more of the ending. Like, I wanted some more time to breathe in the ending.
Yeah, I feel like Act 3 was a little lacking, but I feel like they still rounded the story up. Like, I thought it was rounded, but I just feel like a lot of things could have expanded more.
Yes,
after
I feel
the
that
low
too. Because I
point.
feel like, because there's, like, the low point, like, Mirabelle runs off, and then she and the grandma, like, talk, and then they just, like, there's, like, that song from when they're rebuilding the house. Like, it kind of is, like, really fast after that point. So, yeah, I would have liked to spend more time in, like, that kind of chunk of, like, time in the world. Like, that time period.
Yeah, I feel like I wish there was I feel like a longer conversation between Abuela and the whole family to be like, you know, talking about, oh, she acknowledges what she did was wrong, because as you know, as we've been seeing in the Encanto discourse, a lot of, like, you know, kids, I guess, like, in our generation being like, oh, like, this is a thing that doesn't usually happen in families a lot of the time. Also, people joking about how it's a fairy tale and that's why we don't see things like an older family member
Or just,
acknowledging
like,
what they did was wrong.
like, it's like an elephant in the room
But
for generations.
so I feel like there needed to be more of expanding on that, like the family coming to terms, like, oh, like, we don't have our powers anymore, because no one knew that they were gonna get their powers back, or that Casita would come back to life. So I wish there was, like, you know, being like, okay, like, we accept who we are, like, let's rebuild this house together with our hands.
Yes, I definitely think we should have spent more time with the family having no powers, because that felt like, especially, like, with, like, Luisa, that's, like, because that happened early on where she was like, I'm losing my strength, so that seemed like it was going to be a bigger thing, like, building throughout the story, was everyone's, like, gradually losing their powers or something, but it seemed to just be her, and just with the premise, I think it would have, like, worked better if it was, like, the powers were lost sooner, or it was more of, like, they're not as strong. Yeah, like, something where it came up sooner, or just them not having powers lasted longer. And I know a lot of people have also been saying that they would have preferred that they just didn't get the powers back at all, which I'm not sure how I feel about that personally at the moment. I haven't thought about it enough. I don't know, yeah, just more with, like, I think the taking away of the powers, like, I don't know. I feel like that's probably where most of my questions about the story would lie, is during that period of time.
Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, that was, like, my biggest critique of it. Like, it was just, like, the third act. Like, story, and we're talking about just story-wise, we're not talking about critiquing representation. I feel like it's a whole separate conversation.
Like, when we're just talking about the story structure and all that, and, like, the magical elements of it and all that, you know, rules of the world and all that you have to figure out when you're making a more fantasy story. But yeah, no, overall the movie was, like, chef's kiss.
Do you have a song or songs that you really like from the soundtrack?
You know, I gotta admit that unlike other, I mean, I don't do this with every Disney movie, but I haven't really been listening to the soundtrack. Like, I watched it and I enjoyed it in the moment, but I haven't really found myself being like, oh, I want to go listen to Encanto. But that's also because probably half the time I just want to listen to Taylor Swift now. So, like,
okay.
Not Encanto's fault, it's just my brain's fault. But I am enjoying seeing so much of the songs on social media.
Mm-hmm.
and on TikTok and all that, I probably would obviously relate most to Luisa's song
Oh
about
my
being an
gosh.
eldest daughter.
I know. Oh my gosh, I had such a visceral reaction.
Yeah, that was like I don't know if that one was my favorite song. I really do need to listen to it, but like the whole thing, just the music without watching it, but I do connect to that song a
But
lot.
Luisa's not even the oldest child. She's like
Why? I thought she's the oldest of that family. Of
no,
that their
Issa. Okay, because I found like a thing like an age like what their ages were. So like Isabella and Dolores are the same age, so they're 22. They're both 22, but
Mhm.
Isabella's like the oldest one.
Oh. Wait, why did I think it was the other way around?
Yeah, Luisa's the middle child, and then
Okay, well, so I was
um
completely wrong.
Mirabelle
Disregard
and
everything I say.
Camillo. Mirabelle and Camillo are they're the same age.
Mhm.
And then Antonio's like the youngest.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but I also been seeing like TikToks again, like I feel like a lot of my discourse on Encanto is from TikToks. But like very
Yes.
interesting TikToks though. Like they've been bringing up a lot of
Mhm.
like interesting points and details about the movie about how because Isabella is like kind of like the golden child of the family and like she doesn't have to really do much in terms of like responsibilities that Luisa has,
Mhm.
like carrying donkeys all around town or like moving buildings and everything like that. So a lot of those responsibility, or I guess older sibling responsibilities fall on Luisa. So in a way,
Mhm.
she is kind of like the oldest sibling.
Well, her song is definitely a very eldest daughter
Yeah.
song.
And I also specifically like because it's also interesting seeing that a lot of like like the eldest daughters are the ones who feel this song a lot more because I feel like there's also a conversation about like being raised as like the eldest daughter being also versus being raised like an eldest son because I don't think I've seen a lot of like
Yeah.
guys being like I relate to this.
No. I feel like eldest daughter is like a whole
Yeah.
it's its own
Not to
experience.
say if you were like the eldest son of a family like you wouldn't be able to relate to it, but I feel like more often than
It's
not.
just a different,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just a different experience.
Mhm.
Like, you have different expectations. Like, I don't know, it's just different.
Yeah.
Not necessarily more or less or better or worse. It's just it's just different. I don't
Yeah.
know how else to say it.
And like I feel like as an eldest daughter, like you have to seem like you're needed or wanted
Mm-hmm.
through like the work that you do and not just letting you be yourself. And I feel like that's such a common thing that
Yeah.
happens a lot with daughters who are, especially more so in like POC families.
Mm-hmm. I think I feel like most is eldest granddaughter
Mm.
from recent events. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay. But yeah, just so much to think about in that
Yeah.
song. But yeah, so that was the song that stood out to me. Did you have a different standout song, or was that
Um,
also
I will
your big
say
standout song?
that We Don't Talk About Bruno has really been
Okay, yeah,
like
actually, I did forget about that. That song is also Chef's Kiss.
We Don't Talk About Bruno, like starting from Peppa and Felix's singing together when it's literally just them going on about their wedding. And then I've noticed that like I will go and like sing because how Peppa's like talking about like the clouds and everything, and then Felix just jumps into the
Mm-hmm.
song. So like I've realized that like at random points of the day I will just like sing to myself, being like no clouds allowed in the sky. Like whenever Felix sings that, like I don't know, that part is just so funny to me, so I'll just sing that part to myself. But I really like the storytelling in this song, like it's literally
Mm-hmm.
going through like that side of the family going through like what they all think about Bruno. And
Mm-hmm.
also it's like very much like chisme, like gossip
Yes, that's what I was
gossip
just
that I
thinking of
relate so
too.
much to because I feel like
Yes.
also in my family there's a lot of like, oh, like we don't want to talk about this person, but if you really want to know like this is what we really think about this person, it's like
Yeah. Or it's like a lot of things where it's like we think this, but we're also not sure if this person did this or not, because nobody wants to ask. Nobody's gonna confront anyone face to face.
Yeah, and it's
everyone has their private little, like, I think that's what happened, but I don't know.
No, but it's like, it's such, because it's like exactly what you said in before, where it's like the thing of there's always going to be like an elephant in the room. Like there is something that we need to talk about that no one wants to talk about, but yet if you ask them in private, like they will have their thoughts about it.
Who is it, like in the song? I'm thinking of like all the different parts of the songs. Like Dolores had like I feel like, because Mirabelle's like on the younger side of the family, and I feel like that's also a big thing with like how, you know, when you're like older in like the extended family, I feel like you get more access to the gossip, or you are old enough to remember like when it all was happening. So like all the older members of the family being like, we know all this stuff, and like, or the older cousins being like, well, I heard this, this, and this, because like they would have remembered that time. Also, when you're older, sometimes the parents will tell you more.
You know, actually that's a interesting point you made, because now it just made me think about, you know, like when Dolores sings her part, which I really like, the when she like makes the sound of sand, I'm like, oh, it's very satisfying to hear. But you know, when she as Dolores, she like can hear everything that no one else can, and I feel like that is a good metaphor for like what you said about how like the older kids like are able to like either eavesdrop or like get a lot more information on the gossip when it comes to that. But whenever Camilo comes in and sings his song, it's very like exaggerated, like
he's this monster,
he's like this 7-foot rat man who's just like creeping around, and it's probably from like, you know, all of the adults like talking about Bruno at times where he's created
when he was like a younger yes, exactly. Oh, much to think about. See, this movie, just anytime you think about it, there's new things to consider.
Also, I was talking about this with Dion, my boyfriend, the other day, but we were talking about that song and how like, because you know how like when they talk about Bruno prophesies like the rain on her wedding day, when that was technically all of Peppa's doing, because she controls the weather. And so it's so interesting to see how people perceive like Bruno's gift, like being able to predict such negative things, when the thing that actually came true like was Mirabelle fixing the house and bringing the family back together. And so like, I guess this is also going to another topic about how like a lot of the gifts that the family had were often repressed to be like one thing and only one thing, and not letting them fully be what they are, or like what powers they had.
Definitely with like Isabella, and with her whole thing when she made the little succulent.
Oh my gosh.
And she was like, whoa, I can make all this other stuff. I was like, you go, girl.
I also love that song, that part in the song where like she's all singing about like, oh, I want to see what else I can do, and then Mirabelle is off in the side being like, bring it in, I just want that hug.
Yes, that part's so good.
But
it's just that whole scene is so amazing.
But I don't know about you, but I can also relate between like the like older sibling, youngest sibling dynamic between Isabella and like Mirabelle. Not like I was, because I mean Isabella was kind of an asshole. Well, yeah, she was pretty mean throughout a lot of the film.
She had her own, she was like on her own journey for a bit there.
But like, you know, when you headbutt with like your younger sister.
Yes. Being an older sister, being a sister, like there is no other sibling dynamic like sisters.
Like when we were
the mental gymnastics you do as a sister, and you have a sister. Like, I don't know how it is with sisters and brothers. I don't know how it is between brothers, but sister to sister, that is about as intense as it gets, man.
Because I feel like I felt every like reaction shot with like Mirabelle looking at Isabella throughout the movie, of like just being done with your sister. And I was like, wow, I can relate to that. But also, I think it's just so funny because when I watched this movie with my sisters and it came to the part where Bruno and Mirabelle were like looking at the vision again, and then it
Oh yeah,
ended
he's like, I have to
with
hug
them
her.
hugging, with her and
Yeah.
Isabella hugging. Like I remember like me and my sisters laughing, being like, they have to hug. Cause I don't
Oh
hug my
yeah.
sisters. I don't know if you do.
I hug Marley when we're like saying bye for like she's going away to college and I'm
Yeah.
not, like, we're gonna be apart for
I mean,
months.
it's such an.
That's when we hug.
I guess that's also when me and my sisters hug, but it's not like a genuine, like, oh, like a warm
Yeah.
embrace. It's just such a.
It's like a bye. It's
Yeah.
like goodbye. Yeah. Yeah. No, I just the sisterly stuff in the movie, I was like, this is great. Much to think about.
Yeah. Also,
Also accurate.
the whole thing with Isabella being like, because Mirabelle always thought that she was this like it girl, like very pretty, and then you find out later on where she's like, oh, like everything I'm doing, getting married and all that, like I'm doing it for the family.
Yes. And then the white gay people were trying to take it over, and I was like, no.
She's
Stop.
a lesbian, you're right. This is
My
her
God.
coming out story.
No, it's nobody's coming out story. Oh my God. Just, why does, like, every movie about people of color, it somehow gets turned into something else by white viewers? I don't know how. I don't know why. But it's like, when I watch a movie starring white people, I can relate and find things to connect to or whatever. But for some reason, when it's the other way around, it turns into, let's make the story about anything but the people of color being people of color. And I'm just like, what? Like, look at yourself in the mirror and reflect on what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've seen a lot of that, of a lot of like Latinx, Latina, I don't know what the correct term, because I've seen both ways, Latinx or Latine as the correct term for it. Anyway, a lot of them have been like, we need to gatekeep Encanto because of that. And I, like,
that is very valid. Like, it's just so, it's just like, I don't even have words. Yeah. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, like, you can headcanon the character is gay or bi or whatever. Like, for example, there's the whole thing of how Mirabelle on her shirt, which I also noticed when I was watching, she has the little rainbow that's like the colors of the bi flag. I thought of it as, that's nice. It's like a nod to how Stephanie Beatriz is openly bi in real life. That was it. I left it at that in my head. I was just like, cool. That's probably what it's in reference to, if it's even a reference at all, or it just has to do with her color palette. Fine, like, great. But when it gets turned into taken further to, no, the whole story is about being queer, and it's all a mess. It's all some sort of like I think the latest interpretation that people have is like, this is actually just one giant metaphor for like being queer and coming out or something. And it's like, no, it's not. I don't know how else to tell you besides the fact that that is not what it's about. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that at that point you're being willfully like going out of your way to view the movie like incorrectly.
You know, if something like you're doing something like that takes away from the main point of the movie, the main purpose that it's trying to show and express, then you're not doing it right.
Like, because like, it's one thing when you deal with like other movies, like, I don't know, you can interpret half the Marvel movies as a great love story between Captain America and Bucky Barnes. Fine, whatever. That doesn't really do anything. But when it's movies where it's literally about like another group that is not really represented, you know, like in this case, like Latino people, Colombian people, and then instead it's like hijacking their representation to represent you, but like, and it's just like, that's not like, doing that to each other is not going to get you more representation. Because fine, you can live in a fantasy world, but this is what Encanto is about. Like, you can do that until the cows come home, but it's not going to change the fact that it's not what the movie's about. And it also doesn't, like, if it's not what it's about, that doesn't mean that you're gaining representation from it, because Disney's not going to come out and say, oh yeah, that's what it was about. Like, there's like no point in doing it besides just like this like misaligned like white leftist view of being like, no, it's like fine to do that, because it's like I feel like the perspective like that you have to like do that, to like purposely misinterpret a movie to fit like your own underrepresented thing. It's like you're coming at it from this perspective that like every marginalized group is coming at this issue from an equal place of like, we have all been equally underrepresented, or we have all been equally misrepresented, so it's okay if we like hijack each other's. And it's like, it's not like, I mean, you can't really quantify who has more or less like representation like that much, but like I feel like with the whole thing of like different like groups of color, like that is like a very specific like thing. Like that doesn't need to be a crossover. I don't even know what I'm saying. Just basically like, why can't movies about people of color just stay being about people of color? It's like how I think if your feminism doesn't include advocation for and wanting the best, like wanting liberation for men of color, then that's not real feminism, because so many people get stuck on the whole like, it's about women, it's about women, it's about women. But any kind of advocacy you should be doing should be about like all people. Like, so feminism also is advocating for men of color. You should just not be hijacking other people's representation, and just let movies for people of color be for people of color, and like support that. Like, okay, so you're queer, that's what I was saying, your queer advocacy should also be advocating for people of color, because everybody's liberation is intertwined deeply.
Intersection, bringing it back to intersection.
Yes, intersectionality. So like, you will not get, like, you as a white person, I guess, will gain from this, sure, but like not everybody is going to benefit from you misinterpreting this movie to be about that. So that's taking it away from the whole racial themes. Like, I don't know, it's just like, why? Like, why? I don't know. This is just a lot of years of like being in film school and all that with the white people, and being in, oh my god, when I took a queer cinema class, I was like, gouge my eyes out, this is so weird, I don't want to be here.
And I think it's like also, well, I mean, like you've made a lot of insightful points.
Really just went on my soapbox there.
Yeah, but I think like, when it comes to representation and stuff, because Disney, as we all know, Disney has not been the best with representation, as we've like said in previous podcast episodes and stuff. But what I do like about this movie is that since it's about a very specific culture and community, like you're able to, like give representation to that specific community while still being able, like you said, like I mentioned, like I related a lot to the themes of it, because, like you said, a lot of our histories and like experiences are intertwined with each other. So like we're, to some extent, whatever your experience is, you're still able to relate to the characters or the stories or the dynamics in some way. But I feel like, because the last Disney film that came out, I think, was Raya and the Last Dragon, which I did enjoy, but I don't think it was a good example of representation, because they clumped a lot of Southeast Asian cultures together, and I feel like that took away from me being able to relate to the cultural, I guess, like the sprinkling of the cultural elements through the story a lot of the times, because you know, when they were advertising it, they'd be like, oh, this is supposed to represent like Philippines, Vietnam, like all those different cultures. And I, like, me being Filipino and being like, I for sure know that there's a big difference between like the experiences of Filipino Americans and Filipinos versus like Cambodians versus Vietnamese people. So I'm like, I don't think this is gonna work.
Yeah, I saw a TikTok about that where it was like saying how like Filipinos with like us being able to relate to Encanto and also Moana, and then people were like, oh yeah, Raya exists, but then I was like, nah, I related to those two.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like more so because, again, like this is coming from, I guess, the history of the Philippines, but like the Philippines is such an interesting, I guess, like community and also culture, because it's like Asian, but also there's a lot of Spanish influences, so it's like I feel like I can also relate to a lot of Spanish cultural experiences a lot of the time. And so
yeah, like like, basically, when me and one of my friends in high school who was Mexican, we would talk about, and we were like, we were gonna start a cultural club called Colonized by the Spanish.
Yeah.
Because we just felt like we had so many things in common because our countries shared that history. And stuff. And yeah, the Philippines in particular, too, because there's that Spanish stuff, there's, like, Asian, there's also, like, the island thing.
Yeah.
Like, these were all a bunch of different people living on different islands. It's still almost, like, weird to me that it's, like, one country.
Yeah, right.
Because I think at one point in history, this was literally just islands of not even related peoples living there.
And then,
like, they all had their own things.
King Philip came in and was like, no, we're all gonna live the same way from now on.
Yeah, like, just, what?
What was the point I was making? Oh, yeah, the point I was making is that, because, you know, when we talk about, like, Latin America and Latin culture, I feel like a lot of the time people will, like, group Latin countries and cultures together when, again, like, they're not a monolithic culture. Like, there's so many different things,
Yes, and I mean, the family, too, they all look different. Like, that's how it is. That's how diverse it is
and
there.
also, people are, like, figuring out that, like, you know, Latin...
Mixed race genetics.
Yeah, it's, like, not a race. Like, it's, you know, like, it's
not a race. It's a geographic term. It's a geographic term that I think the U.S. should use more than Hispanic, because I think they mean to... What they're trying to say when they ask you if you're like Hispanic on a job application form, I'm like, I think you're trying to ask if someone is Latine, because otherwise you're literally just asking, are you from a country that speaks Spanish, including Spain? Like, it's like, people just, like, I don't know, white people confuse themselves into that box.
It's very confusing.
Like, they did that to themselves because they made it not good, like, confusing. So, but yeah, totally.
So it's just like, I don't know what am I trying to say? I don't even know anymore. But they're not like, the cultures are not, like,
it's
Latin,
not a monolith.
Yeah, it's not a monolith. Oh my god, is not a monolith, and that, like, I feel like Disney should keep going with this direction of looking at specific cultural stories, because, one, I think it's a good business practice, because when you go more into the specifics of different cultures and experiences, it gives you a narrow view and also a wider pool for different stories that you can tell, aside from, like, you know, being like, oh, here, Raya is gonna represent, like, all of Southeast Asia, or, like, Moana is representing all of, like, you know, Pacific Islander culture.
Pacific Islanders. Yes.
So I feel like if they keep going in this direction, let, you know, creators like the writer for Encanto be able to speak, you know, be able to voice out their stories and to tell their stories. Like, I feel like you can have as many stories as you can have, like, in the future, if you just give the microphone to those people to talk about their experiences.
And let them just be, like, like, letting them be specific. So, because, I've been thinking about that, too. Because of, like, with Moana and, like, Raya and, like, stuff like that, where it's just such a broad, when it's so broad, it's like with Moana, I could still find it, like, relatable, and I think, like, other Filipinos could find it relatable because the whole island thing, but, like, like, the specifics of even, but then you also have Encanto, where it's very specific, but a lot of people who are not from that culture can still relate to it and connect with it. So so, like, I don't, like, it doesn't feel like anything is lost by being more specific. I think more is gained.
I think and I think it, like, because I think I mentioned it before, how I've said that specificity is also intertwined with universality. So, like, if you tell your story as what it is and what experience you're trying to convey, it's not like you're going to be the only one who understands that story, because more often than not, those experiences are similar to a lot of other experiences of other people.
Yes. It's like just being human. It's like, like everyone knows what it feels like to feel scared. Everyone knows what it feels like to love someone. Like, you can be specific about it, but, like, everyone can relate to the emotions of that because they've also felt those emotions, just in a different way or in a different context. Yeah, it's just, so this is definitely a step in the right direction, for sure. And now the next thing is from Pixar, which is Turning Red?
Yeah.
Is that the name of it?
Turning Red.
And now it's
which I saw.
And now it's gonna be on Disney Plus.
They just announced it. And I was like, why? Also, it's the director of the movie is the one who directed Bao, the short.
Yes, I'm so excited.
I was like, oh, why don't you just put it in theaters? Leave it in theaters then. I mean,
I know
they're not even gonna upcharge on Disney Plus. Like, it's just gonna come out.
Yeah, I feel like Disney. They keep doing that with the Pixar movies in particular, where I'm like, I'm torn because I'm like, I would have seen it in theaters, but I know for like a lot of families, it's a lot easier to just pay the Disney Plus thing and see it that way. Like, I think. And then a lot of people were like, people didn't start talking about Encanto until it was on Disney Plus. Like, nobody talked about it when it came out on Thanksgiving. And I'm like, that's true, too. I feel like they could have kept going with the, like, put it in theaters for a couple weeks and then put it on Disney Plus, like, a month later. Like, I feel like that's kind of your best of both worlds solution right there, is do the limited theatrical run and then Disney Plus. They're even doing it with like the Marvel movies. Like Eternals is already gonna be on Disney Plus like this week, and it just came out like 2 months ago. So I don't know. We're entering a very interesting phase of movie theater going. I feel like. Well,
because I know for Encanto, like the most of the audiences that were going for that movie were families with like little kids. So, like, the little kids are not going to be the ones participating in discourse, you know what I mean?
Yes, that's true, too. Yeah. I don't know. Well, we'll see what happens when Turning Red comes out. But, but yes, all this to say, for the forward-looking of Disney, I just hope that this is, like, where they keep, kind of the direction that they keep going and getting more specific. I have no idea what the next Walt Disney Animation Studio film will be, because I don't really keep up that much.
Yeah, I don't know. I just you know, let it wait for the trailer, and I'm like, okay, this new movie's coming out. So
yeah, I'll watch. It's gonna be like Frozen 3 or something. And be like, oh, well, it's already time for that. I don't think so, but
okay, I think we can go and wrap it up for this episode of Pineapple Headache. Do you have any lasting thoughts?
Everyone go stream Encanto if somehow you have not yet. And if you haven't, I'm kind of judging. I'm gonna be honest. But just go watch it, and I won't judge you anymore.
Oh. I have one lasting thought.
Ooh, okay.
I love the supportive fathers in this movie.
Oh, yes. That was such good energy. The men are so wholesome.
Yeah.
They're just so good. I just love them all. And I just love the diversity within the family. And it's been very funny watching people discover that, like, that's how genetics works.
Oh, being like, oh my gosh, there's Afro Latine people, or that,
and also like indigenous people.
Yeah.
Like the fact that genetically speaking, you could totally have 3 kids that look as diverse as the triplets. And like that's how life is. And you can have genes that skip a generation, and then your kids don't necessarily look like you, but look like a grandparent or another relative. Like, everyone just needs to go back and do Punnett squares, because they are just confusing themselves, being like, what? How, like, oh my god, I saw something where I think people were saying they saw people think that Peppa was, like, adopted.
Okay.
Or they were like, what? And I was like, please go back to biology class.
Someone needs to go to freshman year of high school and take biology again.
Go do those little Punnett squares, and then also pay attention the next time you encounter a mixed race family, or you just go to any Latina community and really look at the people and how diverse they look, and then open your eyes. I don't know. Anyway,
okay. Well, I think we're gonna go wrap this up for this episode.
Whoa.
But thank you everyone for listening to Pineapple Headache in the year of our Lord 2022. And I hope that you keep listening to more episodes.
Yeah, also don't get COVID. Everyone stay safe. Wear your mask.
Don't get COVID. Okay.
Watch out for Omicron.
Okay, Madison, would you say that this episode has been a headache?
I think the only headache has been the white people we've mentioned making the discourse so much.
Oh yeah, just don't do that. That's a headache. Okay, well, thank you for listening, guys. We'll be back with another episode.
Bye. See ya at the next headache.